wanna live. I wanna live.
Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah! Tally ho!
More Star Trek that we are going to discuss in chronological order. Now, this was a fun one, viewing The Enemy Within, because normally we watch it just together, the two of us. But this time, what did we do?
We actually had a viewing with a group of people. We invited some people over to our place and watched it together.
I had a great time doing it like that, because afterwards we had a roundtable discussion of the episode. So to a degree, we're going to incorporate some of those feelings into our commentary, because Trek is best when it's discussed, not simply viewed.
That's right.
So let's go into Bjo Trimble's Concordance. I'm going to spin the dial on front, look for The Enemy Within. The call letters are EW, according to Bjo Trimble. And on page 39, there is a synopsis.
The Enemy Within, written by Richard Matheson, directed by Leo Penn, stardate 1672.1, aired 10/6/1966. Contamination from magnetic ore brought aboard on Technician Fisher's clothes causes a transporter malfunction over the planet Alpha 177. Kirk, in beaming aboard shortly after the crewman, is unknowingly split into two entities identical in appearance. One Kirk is good but weak-willed. The other is evil. The evil double creates havoc aboard the ship until the situation is discovered and the crew can find and restrain him. Meanwhile, the transporter continues to split both inanimate and animate objects, forcing the rest of the landing party to remain on Alpha 177 without protection as the ship's freezing night rapidly approaches. On board the ship, it is discovered that the split is weakening Kirk. The good half is losing the power to make command decisions, and the evil half is dying. Neither can survive without the other. Kirk must be made whole again, and the landing party must be beamed aboard before freezing to death. Scotty manages to fix the transporter, but with so little time left that they must immediately try to rejoin the two Kirks without being certain of the outcome. McCoy is particularly fearful because the small dog-like creature, also split, returns from the transporter joined but dead. Scotty adjusts the transporter, and Kirk takes the risk, having no other choice, and returns alive as one man. The landing party is then beamed aboard, nearly frozen, but still alive.
All right, let's talk about our original feelings about this episode. Do you remember watching it when you were younger?
I vaguely remember it, and yes, I thought it was a good episode.
I remember watching it with my buddy Dave. We enjoyed it very much so. It was one of the highlight episodes for us. I think it had a fantastic balance of adventure with a gripping storyline, some sci-fi thrown in, but there was also something that told about the human condition as well.
Which is what Star Trek was always good at. And as Spock said, this is a good opportunity to examine the two sides of a man and see the good half, which we call the compassion, and then the evil half, which is the more aggressive side.
So we start out by seeing a dog that is simply draped in a bizarre pink bodysuit.
And we have seen that the meme with that dog, gets passed around Facebook a lot, saying, don't forget one time this passed as an alien.
Yes.
That
doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me. Things like that, because you'll have some people that strictly watch modern television, and they'll use that as an example, saying, I can't watch original series because it's too goofy.
And they never really called it a dog, I don't think. So it's...
No.
Right. I mean, so it was just
know
something...
it's a dog.
Well, yeah, we know what it is, yeah.
I like it. I find that's the type of thing when I look at the visuals of TOS, I find that endearing. And it doesn't weigh me down that it's a dog in a little suit. We get the point.
Right. And we know what it was, and it was cute. They were holding it and everything.
We're not going to do a book breakdown on this episode. Oftentimes at the end of the episode, we talk about the James Blish novelization, as well as any comic books associated with it. There really were no follow-ups in the comics that we could find. The novelization pretty much held to what we saw in the series. I mean, that's just one of the little nitpicky things, is that it mentioned in the novelization that the dog was on a leash, where it wasn't in the show. But
yeah,
overall, the novelization, or we wouldn't call it novelization because it was a short story, the adaption,
right,
was pretty true to form here. But we're introduced at this point to Kirk's wraparound tunic. This was introduced so that the viewers could have a visual reference to who was the evil Captain Kirk and who was the good Captain Kirk.
Right. Well, I mean, like we couldn't tell anyway, because the evil Kirk, always had more perspiration on his face.
That's a sign of evil. She sweat profusely, right?
I guess so.
Eyeliner. What about the eyeliner? That was brought out in our public viewing. Was, wow, look at all that eyeliner on evil Shatner.
Yeah, that, and the way he held his facial expressions, and that is something that I read about this. Richard Matheson, who wrote this, also wrote the 2 episodes of Twilight Zone that William Shatner was on.
I mean, think about that. That guy wrote 2 incredible episodes.
Well, actually, yes, 7 episodes of Twilight Zone.
Including
the 2 with Shatner.
But the 2 with William Shatner, he ended up writing, and then he ended up writing for Star Trek. How awesome is that?
That is so neat, yes. Well, but he was asked to write for Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry wanted to use established writers. Mm-hmm. So Richard Matheson, when it was asked to come in, he had done the episodes Nick of Time and Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, were the 2 William Shatner episodes of Twilight Zone. And what Matheson said about this was that he was very confident that William Shatner could do this role that he had played for him, playing both the good and the evil Kirk. I mean, because he loved Shatner's work that he did for his scripts on Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. So he was already a fan, which is cool.
And Richard Matheson wrote Third from the Sun as well. I mean, he wrote some excellent Twilight Zone episodes that became very well known within time, some of the most beloved ones. So it's one more reason why we love original series Star Trek. Excellent writing. Oh, so we're going into Captain Kirk being split into 2 personalities. But we see there was the good side and the evil side of Captain Kirk. The whole point was, well, with the evil side of Captain Kirk, we saw the aggressiveness. Yes. And the scene that most are familiar with was the attempted rape scene to Janice Rand, which we found out later that was borderline for television of that time to include a scene like that.
Yes, it was pushing boundaries, as Star Trek always did. So the Gene was actually worried about network censors at the time, but Richard Matheson wanted to keep that in because it was a way to show how evil this evil Kirk is. I mean, for a human, the best way to show an evil man is to show them doing something like that, something really heinous and violent.
Mm-hmm. The other Captain Kirk, what we considered the good Captain Kirk, what happened within time with the good Captain Kirk?
He lost ability to command, the ability to make decisions. And what they brought out was the good Kirk, or actually it's the evil Kirk that was needed to be a good leader. And that is something that I had never thought about before this episode. That to lead is that's your more aggressive side there that has to be there to let you do that.
I've often said, and for those of you that listen to our regular StarPod log podcast, there's a comic book segment that we have on there. And I'm usually on there with my best friend, my main man. We work together, and we've often said the worst managers are the indecisive ones, or the worst ones are the ones that want to be friends with everybody. Somebody who needs to take the lead has the attitude, in order to make omelets, you have to crack a few eggs. And that's just the way it is. You can't be fun and happy all the time if you want the job done. And that's what this episode drove home, that we all have a balance within us. We have to strike that balance, but the more and more you're in roles of leadership, you have to have some assertiveness to you.
Exactly. Kirk, wanting to tell the crew, and Spock saying you have to be the leader. You can't let the crew know that you have any flaws. And I understand that part was also from Gene, because he said he had been in the military, and that is part of what they say, that the military leaders cannot look flawed or weak to the people that they command.
Because that's influential. If you are a weak leader, those you're taking command over or who you were directing, they're going to turn weak or not care or be lackadaisical or lose confidence. Yes. Interesting, that scene with Grace Lee Whitney, she was having a hard time getting into the proper emotion, and she relates that in order to help her out, William Shatner actually slapped her in the face. Wow. to get
something
her, that was what she considered the solution to get her to start crying and to feel into the part. And we didn't see her a lot in Star Trek because she did have some personal issues, but we can consider her a semi-reoccurring character.
She was on it enough, and given enough lines in a lot of episodes that she is very well remembered, and really was. We thought she was one of the crew at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek Trivia. Question number 1. What are the designations on Rand's door plate? Question number 2. What does McCoy call Technician Fisher as he leads him back to bed?
We see the engine room at this time with the large components of machinery. It's during this time when they're hunting down the evil version of Kirk that the script dictated that Mr. Spock karate chop evil Kirk. But that didn't happen in the episode. Why is that?
Well, Leonard Nimoy had this idea. He just didn't think Spock would fight that way. So he came up with the Vulcan nerve pinch. So this is the first episode of Star Trek where we got to see that. Spock did the nerve pinch on evil Kirk.
Now, can you imagine if somebody else was cast as Mr. Spock? That's one aspect of Star Trek lore that we wouldn't have. So thank you, Leonard Nimoy, for developing all Vulcans, essentially, this unique skill set that they have. We used to think, at least this was what was taught, that is a certain energy that the Vulcans expel from their fingers, but we're finding out that other humans can be taught to do this method as well.
But the nerve pinch has become something iconic that other people, who aren't as much into Star Trek, they kind of know it. And it's been used on other things. They used it in one of the Police Academy movies as sort of a joke. and I know it has been incorrectly called the Vulcan death grip, but that is not the same thing. And of course we have to mention, as some people said, that William Shatner overacted again in as the evil Kirk. Yeah, he did very exaggerated facial expressions with the evil Kirk. Maybe he could have toned it down, but I think it was a good job.
No, I like that. I like that a lot. Because we needed to see the strong contrast.
Right, and because he could do the meek Kirk just as well. So we did see that, yes.
We did see something unique in this episode that we will never see again, and that is the phaser being able to set in such a way that it doesn't explode a rock or burn a rock, but it can heat up a rock. It's the only time that's seen in TOS.
Really? Yeah, that was good too. Yeah, and it's so nice that the landing party at least were able to do that. They at least provided some heat for themselves. But then they said the phasers eventually ran out of power, so they couldn't do that anymore.
And Richard Matheson expressed that his main influence in this episode was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, he wanted to do that type of story. Now, and of course, we know this type of story has been done before on other TV shows, or the same idea has been done in different ways. But I love Star Trek's take on it, so we don't want to take away from the fact that it was still a good episode.
Yes, we can see the influences there, but there were a lot of twists, a lot of changes, and especially the thought-provoking process behind it. I also like the idea of when they wanted to send the animal back, or they did send the animal back, the animal did not survive. So they had to figure out, well, why didn't the animal survive? And there was this banter of, well, was it a physical reaction or was it a mental reaction? Could the animal not comprehend that it needed the two to join back together? Or was it the shock of the transporter that put that in? So we could argue saying once a person knows that they need to go into this effect to be united, the body, the mind drives the body. So that now Captain Kirk, knowing that this was necessary, his body would not be in shock because his mind could calm it down. So I'm thinking about that in so many ways in real life. If you know that there's going to be some sort of adversity, your body can handle it better, as opposed to the shock of something happening.
That could be true. Just expecting something might lessen the blow of it. But it depends on the case, because, there could be some anticipation that makes you even more leery, that makes you even more scared, and some people just get scared to death of something that never happens.
Yeah, that is true. So I appreciate that Spock and McCoy and Kirk, and we see it numerous times, that trinity of arguing points. Each of them has something to say that's valid. In this case, Kirk was just a listener, but it makes you wonder. And it does apply to other areas in life.
Star Trek Trivia. Question number 1. What are the designations on Rand's door plate? Answer: 3C46. Question number 2. What does McCoy call Technician Fisher as he leads him back to bed? The answer: Bucko. I also understand that the part about the landing party, that whole B story, was actually added in later. They liked the part about Kirk being split in two, and that was the main story, but they just felt like they needed something else to add to it, something else to just... Well, for one thing, the landing party gave them a timeline, like, oh, we've got to solve this problem fast so that we can get these people back to the ship. So it was just a way to add more drama, to add something else, to add more urgency to it.
That made sense. And from what I understand, Richard Matheson didn't like that was added in. But that's not common. Writers don't like people fiddling with their work.
That's true, and it's one of the things that Gene always had a problem with. He always clashed with the writers. And another, of course, the thing that people always mention about this episode, and it was brought up the night that we viewed it, why didn't they use the shuttlecraft? You
figured that would be an easy solution to solve the problem. And I was looking for it in the rewatch. I was hoping they would say something along the lines of, well, there's some kind of interference on the planet where the shuttlecraft can't make it. I'm sure there's some kind of technobabble they could have done, just a line or two to answer that.
Yeah, they could have, but I think it's just that the shuttle had it really not been invented at this time. I think that was still too early in the series, where they just hadn't come up with that idea yet.
I believe you're right. Now that I'm thinking of it, so far in the episodes that we've been watching, I imagine it's like anything else budgetary. They didn't build the shuttlecraft yet. So I'm going to guess and say yes. Now, you like the scene when Captain Kirk is bare-chested. And this is just one of the many.
Yeah, I just had to bring that up again, And the scene where Spock mentioned how he also has his two halves, the human half and the Vulcan half, and his intelligence wins over both, and that is how he is able to function day to day. I love that scene. That's one of because Spock was always my favorite character. This is one of my things that just made me love him even more, and this was a part of the big development of his character, because it was never really stated so explicitly before that this is the way he is. I don't think they ever said before that he was really half. One time they said part Vulcanian, and that's about all they've mentioned of it before.
So now, we did not watch the series when it first aired in 1966.
Well, no,
And
they did
this-
say.
Well,
I'm sorry about his human mother and Vulcan father. They did say that.
They
before.
did say that, yes. But these episodes were aired out of order. We're watching them in production order right now. But the average person did not see them in order.
Yeah, so watching it back then, you might not have known it yet
Mm-hmm.
about Spock's heritage.
Yes.
So, but he did say, I remember now, it was in the Corbomite maneuver, which we saw, where he did say he had a Vulcan father and a human mother, but this was the first time he said that he has those two halves that are battling all the time, and his intelligence wins over both, and that was just a fascinating part of his character. And another thing that was, I think this is really the first time they had the Spock McCoy banter, where they were arguing about, let's see, part of it was in that same discussion where Spock mentioned his two halves. And so they were talking about Kirk and how we should handle Kirk being separated into two people. And then later Spock and McCoy talking about the animal and how it was fused together and died, and whether it died of shock or not.
Mm-hmm.
Was there something line like, oh, McCoy said, "For once I agree with Spock."
Yes.
And that the way they banter, and sometimes it was comical in some episodes, and other time it was serious, but they argued a lot, and that was always something that became something we always watched for on the show and expected, and we knew that these two characters loved each other. They were just that was part of their conversations, because they were so different themselves, but they really had a lot of respect for each other.
And this was an episode where McCoy relayed a famous line that he would say over and over and over again. "He's dead, Jim." This time he was referring to that little dog.
Amazing. Give me some brandy.
What did you think about Captain Kirk when he yelled that?
I guess it was typical of shows back then. I think I remember a lot of shows where people drank.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. That was very common. I remember watching the Jeffersons. Every time the Jeffersons would walk in, they'd fix themselves a cocktail. But yeah, that was super popular in the 60s as well. Everyone had like a cocktail cart.
Well, they had their own bar in their house.
That's
On
true,
Bewitched, yeah. They did.
That's right, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is the first time we see this iconic bottle, this Saurian Brandy bottle.
The bottle is, to me, it's very unique shaped. I mean, but you know that it's actually a bottle that actually is made.
It is. We have it in our collection.
It wasn't just made for the show.
No,
or
it
was
wasn't.
it at the time?
No, it was a George Dickel bottle. Yeah, we have it. It's like a commemorative bottle of George Dickel that came out, like a small limited edition. But it's not so small and limited edition that you can't find them. But it's like a powder horn shape, I believe they call it. I remember when I first got it years ago, you see them every once in a while in the antique stores. And I did the same thing that the producers did. All I did was I painted the leather on it red, and they wanted to hide where it said George Dickel because the glass is etched at a certain area, so they just took red tape and covered over it, or a red piece of leather. But that's why there's that extra braid there, is because they needed to hide where it had the etchings in there. But it is fairly easy to find. It's not that hard to find. They don't make that shape bottle anymore. It's been decades since they made that shape bottle, but you could find it for a reasonable price. But we end up seeing this bottle quite often throughout Star Trek lore.
Yeah, I remember seeing it several times.
I mean, even in later Star Treks, like Deep Space Nine, it's visible.
It's sort of another Star Trek trademark.
And you'll see it at conventions, too. Oftentimes, cosplayers will carry it around.
Yeah, you did one year.
I did, yeah. That was the year you met me.
Yeah, it was.
Again, another reason why this episode stands the test of time, works into the rest of Star Trek, is because there's multiple references to just this piece of prop, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was just something they picked up, and it's like, I mean, why not use it? I mean, just dressed it up a little, like you said, covering up the label.
No, it's awesome. So, as we wrapped up viewing it, what were your final thoughts on this episode?
It was a good episode examining human nature. And, oh yes, and Kirk saying like, well, I don't want to take him back. He's an animal, but I need to take him back. I mean, yeah, because if you could actually see those two parts of yourself, it probably would be shocking. So it was a good story that made you think about these things.
This episode, I still love. It still holds up. It doesn't counter. We ask ourselves, how does it fit in with the rest of the Star Trek universe? It still fits in. It doesn't veto anything else that we know that's coming up. And it actually adds to it. It's an episode that introduces the Vulcan nerve pinch.
Another thing was, I mean, I just have to say this. When Kirk was beaming up, when they first showed evil Kirk appear on the Enterprise, he did not have his Starfleet emblem on his uniform. I think that appeared later.
Well, the Starfleet, that's because they were dry cleaning. And they always had to take off the patches when they were dry cleaning. And they forgot to sew it back on for that one scene.
That must have been it. I know I read one explanation, an in-universe explanation was
yes, we're always looking for in-universe.
Yes.
What happened?
It could have just been the transporter, like the fact that the emblem is made of special material and the transporter just didn't materialize it until a few minutes later, because I think the next time they showed evil Kirk, he did have it.
Yes. I like that. I could work with that.
Okay.
Because we always say Star Trek is never wrong. We just have to figure out the reason why it's right.
Exactly. Any inconsistencies or nitpicking, people always find explanations for. Thanks for joining us on this away mission.
Please give us a 5-star review on your podcast app.
This helps others find out about us too.
We welcome feedback and comments. Drop us a subspace transmission via starpodlog@gmail.com. That's starpodlog@gmail.com.
Until next time, live long and prosper. Music for this episode provided by 5-Year Mission. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.